Welcome everyone to CESR's annual community reception and awards. My name is Catherine Wendell, and I am the Executive Director of the Center for Ethics and Social Responsibility called CESR at CU Boulder's Leeds School of Business. CESR's mission is to empower business leaders to drive solutions to environmental, social, and ethical challenges. And we do this through our student programs, our faculty research, and our strategic partnerships. We envision a more sustainable, inclusive, and ethical world. We have an amazing team at CESR, and I'd like to acknowledge and thank the two members of the team who are here today. So special thanks to Justine Roberts, if you want to stand really quickly, and also to Taylor Dewitt. All right, so this year at CESR, we are seizing the moment to foster conversations and enable action related to the integration of environmental, social, and governance, or ESG, factors into business strategy and operations. First, we're excited to announce we're developing a new ESG integration and sustainability pathway for Leeds MBA and undergraduate students. And this pathway, like all of our pathways at CESR, is linked to experiential learning opportunities, to recommended courses, to treks, to partner organizations, and most importantly, to jobs. CESR also is launching a new online executive education offering called Climate Action for Business that will enable business professionals to develop and implement climate action plans. Related to convenings, CESR is playing an important role in helping to shape the upcoming UN Global Climate Summit called Right Here, Right Now, which CU Boulder is hosting on December 1st through the 4th. And I'm just curious if we could do a show of hands, who in the audience has heard about this Right Here, Right Now conference? Okay, great, about half. Okay, that's good. We need to do a better job of getting the word out. It's very exciting. As part of the summit, I will be moderating a conversation involving chief sustainability officers, and this will take place on December 3rd regarding their commitments to climate and human rights. And this conversation, like all of the UN Global Climate Summit, will be live streamed, and so all of you are welcome to listen in. And then last but not least, at CESR, we're making a strong effort to develop partnerships at the local, national, and global levels with influential organizations. And these partnerships are linked to our pathways. And I mentioned the first pathway, the one around ESG and sustainability. We also offer a pathway for students in clean energy, as well as natural and organic products. So moving forward, I just want to say I'm full of hope that CESR's programs and partnerships will enable more values-based, purpose-driven business models to flourish and help drive solutions to the environmental and social challenges that surround us in this world. Now, I'm excited to introduce our keynote speaker, Richard Steele, whom I had the privilege of meeting about a year ago, recently after Richard moved to Boulder from the Bay Area. Richard is the CEO of Parsec Ventures, an investment firm focused on early-stage companies, and holds multiple board positions with organizations focused on financial services, higher education, technology, endurance athletics, leadership training, civics education, entrepreneurship, and American economic competitiveness. One of Inc. magazine's fastest-growing company CEOs, he has run both private and public companies over the last 2 decades and advised the White House Business Council for the last 9 years. Richard founded and chairs a philanthropic fund, writes for Forbes, and is the author of the best-selling book, Elevated Economics. He's an alumnus of Harvard Business School, where he serves on the alumni board. Please join me in welcoming Richard Steele.
I had to check and make sure I wasn't wearing the same tie. So it's great to be here. Thank you, Catherine, for the introduction. Really appreciate it. I'm very fortunate, and we're all very fortunate to have Catherine at CESR. Thank you so much for all the hard work that you do, and to your team as well. I wanted to congratulate the CESR Community Connector Award recipients. We are so grateful for your outstanding work, so thank you again very much. And as Catherine mentioned in her remarks, I wrote a book called Elevated Economics, and to my surprise, legitimately to my surprise, it won Business Book of the Year in the economics category. And here's what some people had to say about the ideas that were presented in the book. And you'll note the subtitle, which references conscious consumers, and that's a nod to John Mackey's book on conscious capitalism. And John was, of course, the founder and former CEO of Whole Foods, which is one of the most widely recognized purpose-driven businesses in the United States. And speaking of purpose-driven businesses in the US, there are a lot that are rooted right here in Boulder. So Celestial Seasonings, which is run by my friend Mo Siegel, Techstars and Foundry Group, which were co-founded by Brad Feld, who a lot of you know, the Unreasonable Group, led by Danny Epstein, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention Alfalfa's Market, founded by Mark Retzlaff. So Mark, who is here, Mark, can you wave so we see you? So Mark's here. Mark also co-founded Horizon Organic Dairy and Rudy's, I think he's chairman, right, of Rudy's Organic Bakery. We have a lot of his products in our house. And he's a CESR advisory board member, and he's launching a new venture called Climate Foods. And if I'm counting correctly, Mark has racked up 3 Lifetime Achievement Awards. So pleasure to have you here, Mark. Thank you for joining us. So let's get to it. So I do spend a lot of my time, there we go, talking to business leaders and folks in government about these changes that we're seeing in the business community. And the term confluence always comes up. And that term confluence is typically used when 2 rivers of similar size meet. If the rivers aren't of similar size and one is smaller, that's referred to as a tributary. And in the same way, we see all these big, meaty issues that are affecting business, and they're happening all at the same time. So there's this confluence of events. And so I decided to sort of codify the ideas around these events in this book to help business leaders navigate the future and sort of see around what might be the next corner. So things like climate change and racial injustice and issues around diversity and inclusion and regulatory changes, as well as new accounting standards, the investing and consumption habits of the next generation that are changing, and the accessibility of information, right? We're all walking around with smartphones in our pocket. So as I was doing research for the book, this was the headline in the New York Times. Shareholder value, right, is no longer everything, so say top CEOs. So this really hit me like a ton of bricks because, right, we're all students of business and we learn about Milton Friedman and his theory of shareholder primacy, which basically states, I see a lot of people nodding their heads, which basically states that the purpose of business is to return value to shareholders. And sort of the subtext is like at all costs. But it seems as though this might not be true. So there was a thought in my head when I read this, immediately thinking, who are all these left-wing nutjob CEOs saying that profit isn't everything? Well, it turns out that it's Jeff Bezos of Amazon and Mary Barra from General Motors and a whole host of people. You probably recognize a lot of them, right? Robert Smith from Vista Equity Partners and Tim Cook from Apple, et cetera. And it turns out that these 7 people are joined by about 133 other people, CEOs of America's largest companies. And they form a group called the Business Roundtable. So has anybody heard or read the Business Roundtable's statement on the purpose of a corporation? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so we've got maybe 10 here. Well, this happened a couple of years ago, and they put up this new statement for the purpose of business, which flew in the face of the 22-year-long standing statement for the purpose of business. And in order, here's the new purpose for a corporation. In order. Number 1, delivering value to our customers. Fair enough. Number 2, investing in our employees, including providing benefits and work training, etc. Number 3, again, in order, dealing fairly and ethically with our suppliers, supporting the communities in which we work, and fifth, generating long-term value for shareholders. Not short-term value, long-term value. So this is the new purpose of business according to 140 of the CEOs of America's largest companies. This brings us to this idea of ESG that Catherine mentioned in her comments. So environmental, social, and governance, right? Environmental, pretty easy to understand. Conservation and protection of the natural environment. Social, a little more esoteric, relationship with employees, suppliers, clients, and communities. And then governance, as you can see here, standards for company leadership, how a company behaves, what they stand for. Well, so let's double click on that a little bit. And again, the E is always the easiest one to wrap our heads around, right? How we deal with energy use and conservation in our businesses, air emissions and air quality, etc. S, right? Social. Labor standards and employee relations, production quality and safety. You kind of gloss over this, right? This is sort of 5 words that are pretty easy to say, but what does that mean, right? Labor standards and employee relations. Employee relations. How do we treat our employees? What do we owe to our employees? What do our employees expect of us? What stands do we take on moral and political issues, right? So there's a lot to unpack there. I won't read the rest of it. You can see it. Governance, ethical business practices, board independence and diversity. I've been on boards that are populated by friends and cronies of the CEO, basically a room full of yes men, and no women on that particular board. And you see the negative effects of that in a pretty stark way. You look at things like executive pay versus employee pay. How much does the CEO make? How much does the least paid employee make? So these are some of the issues that businesses are grappling with. And as we get to some of the headlines, why is ESG a big deal? Well, you see here, right? The next decade of investing will be defined by ESG. Sustainable assets hit $1.2 trillion. Sustainable and ESG investing are something that everybody should be considering because you can have profit and you can also have impact. And Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock is a firm that has over $9 trillion of assets under management, $9 trillion of AUM. And Larry Fink says that the shift to sustainable investing is a tectonic shift. That's how big of a change that the CEO of BlackRock says ESG investing and sustainable investing is. All right, so what does that mean for business? Well, you've got GM saying that they're going to phase out gas-powered vehicles by 2035. Volvo said the same thing. Ford said the same thing. You've got Walmart saying that they're going to get to net zero emissions across all of their operations. By 2040, they're going to electrify their fleet. By 2040, they're transitioning to safer refrigerants for their stores and warehouses. They went a step further, and they said they are going to become a regenerative company. So Doug McMillon, who is the CEO of Walmart, was the past chair of the Business Roundtable. So he's taking the biggest retailer in the world and answering the call to make these changes. Being a regenerative company means protecting, managing, and restoring 50 million acres of land and a million square miles of ocean by 2030. Some other headlines. Right now, we see Pakistan, a third of Pakistan is underwater. The U.S. is quadrupling aid to poor countries because of climate change. You see the DOE, the Department of Energy, saying that we want to get to 45% renewable energy, specifically solar, in the United States by 2050, right? California has banned the sale of internal combustion engine cars by 2035. You will not be able to buy an internal combustion engine car in the state of California. And as we all know, as goes California, goes the rest of the nation. So, We have scientists now saying that you've got to leave fossil fuels in the ground. You've got to leave them alone completely in order to reach our climate targets. You've got banks saying that they're pledging net zero financed emissions. So what does that mean? That means that banks are not going to finance, they're not going to lend money to companies who are engaged in projects that increase greenhouse gas emissions. Think, extraction activities, mining, drilling, et cetera. You've also got insurance companies facing pressure from shareholders to not insure those same projects. So we're all right in the business school. So what does that mean? That means your cost goes up. That means your ROI goes down. That means your IRR, your internal rate of return, goes down. Those projects become less and less attractive on paper, and they become less and less attractive for the other reasons and from some stakeholder pressure as well. So this gets us to the SDGs. So show of hands, who here has heard of the SDGs? Oh, this is a good room. Okay, I'm going to give you a hint. It's a little bit of a logo hint. Who's heard of the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals? Okay, so the Sustainable Development Goals. These are the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, right? They were adopted by all United Nations member states in 2015, all, which is a pretty amazing statistic considering. They provide, and this is the UN's definition, a shared blueprint for peace and prosperity for people and the planet now and into the future. The SDGs recognize that ending poverty and other deprivations must go hand in hand with strategies that improve health and education, reduce inequality, and spur economic growth, all while tackling climate change and working to preserve our oceans and forests. So the SDGs combine to make up the framework that is used for businesses and governments all over the world to map to the outcomes that society is demanding them to achieve. They're numbered and color-coded, as you see here, and they are different for different industries. So there's a framework that businesses and institutions and governments can use, and I try to educate business leaders about this because there are a lot of risk areas. We look at macro risks in business, we look at micro risks, we look at regulatory risks. So right now, you've got 823 cities, 101 regions across the world that have set net zero targets. You've got 1,500 companies that have pledged net zero targets in 2020. That's over 2,500 today. And you've got major countries, China, the biggest polluter, saying that they're going to go carbon neutral by 2060. Now, they gave themselves a 40-year runway to get there, but at least they're at the table. And in a first for the Fed, like it says here, the central bank says climate change does pose a stability risk. You've also got hundreds of billions of dollars in pension funds, and those pension funds and endowments, university endowments among them, dropping fossil fuel stocks left and right. You also have municipalities that are contributing to those macro factors as well, those risks, right? So San Francisco banning natural gas. If you're a builder or a contractor, this affects you. If you are a manufacturer of ovens and ranges and water heaters, this affects you, right? So we're building the case that understanding ESG, understanding the SDGs, not to get into acronym soup here, is important for business going forward. I would say probably the biggest regulator from a public company standpoint, of course, is the SEC. I wanted to read you something. I want to get in the weeds here a little bit. There is a rule that would require a registrant, that is a publicly traded company or a company that applies to go public, to disclose information about its greenhouse gas emissions. So this is divided into Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3. Let me step out of the way so you can all see this. Direct greenhouse gas emissions, Scope 1. Indirect from purchased energy is Scope 2. But in addition, and this is incredibly, incredibly meaningful, a registrant would be required to disclose greenhouse gas emissions from upstream and downstream activities in its value chain, for Scope 3. If material, so if it's deemed material, which we'll get to in a second, or if the registrant has set a greenhouse gas emission target or goal. So forget about that last part, because if they don't want to report on it, they're not going to set a goal. If it's deemed material, so if this rule passes, if it's deemed material, think about Walmart as an example, right? Think about every product that is sold in Walmart having to have its greenhouse gas emissions known and tallied. Every vendor, every supplier, every vendor of every vendor. I have run public companies in the past. I have vowed to never run public companies again, solely for the paperwork, right, that the SEC mandates. This would be a whole nother level. But if this passes, it's going to be a real watershed moment for the environment, for public company disclosures, et cetera. Okay, we've talked a lot about E, the environment. Let's talk about S on the social side of things. Market demand is reshaping behavior. It is going incredibly fast, and you see some of the headlines here. Citigroup found that racism has cost the United States $16 trillion. That is an incredible amount of money. CEOs pledge 1 million jobs for Black Americans. This is through the 110 initiative, which trains Black candidates for corporate roles. Long time coming, definitely needed. Citi pledging to become anti-racist and review their internal policies. On the gender parity side, does anybody know the percentage, or want to guess, to shout out numbers, the percentage of Fortune 500 companies that are run by women? Any guess? 5%, 10%? I didn't hear you. Less than 1. So it's 7.4%. It is a dismal statistic. 37 companies out of 500 are run by women. A dismal statistic, but that number is going to change. California passed Senate Bill 826, and that required to have at least one female director on board. So I love this statistic. The number of companies in California with no female directors at all dropped to 1% from 28% before the law was passed in 2018. So in that 3-year span, you see the change. That law was actually overturned recently, but the benefits have already been sort of ingrained in California corporate society. So the SEC approved the Nasdaq diversity rule, which you have to have 2 diverse board directors or explain your failure to do so, which I thought was great. Okay, this is not without controversy. Our friends on the right have some things to say about ESG. They don't like it. They don't like it at all. So let's talk about why and what we can learn from that. So there is no consensus definition of ESG. That's number one. It is no longer a fringe issue. I wouldn't be here probably if it was, right? It is in every boardroom. Lost some? No, it came back. It's in every boardroom. It's in every marketing department. It's no longer a siloed topic. Greenwashing is widespread. That's another complaint of the folks on the right. If we are open to it, open-minded, and we listen to those voices, this can be helpful to us because greenwashing is widespread. Greenwashing refers to saying that you're doing good stuff, but not actually doing it, right? Specifically in the E of ESG on the environmental side, but in other areas as well, bless you. So that's a valid criticism, as are most of these. The ESG issues are typically taken up by the left, so they get associated with the left, so then they get branded as sort of these woke initiatives. And you see this whole battle for the soul of a corporation. Basically, what we're saying here is that as confidence in public institutions has waned, the mantle had to be taken up by business on issues that are socially divisive, let's say. And businesses are encouraged more and more now than ever to take a stand. In Europe, so this last point, in Europe, it's not the same. They're much more stakeholder-centric culture than we are here in the US. Here, it's become more of this lightning rod, as it says here. And then we have our friend Elon. So I'll pause and let you read this for a moment. So what happened here? So he's right. First thing happened, right? And what happened was that, remember Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions? So Exxon, by adjusting and making reductions to its Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions, relating to the company itself, not the products that they sell, oil and gas. They improved, they made reductions to their Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions, and so their ESG score went up. Tesla was dropped from the S&P 500 ESG index because, number one, they did not have a low carbon strategy, which is the most idiotic thing I have ever heard, because Tesla alone is probably the single biggest contributor to decarbonizing the American auto industry. But on paper, they didn't have a low carbon strategy. And then they did have issues about their business code of conduct, and remember all those crashes that happened with their autopilot cars, right? So they didn't behave very well with the NHTSA investigation and things like that. And so there were some deaths. There were some deaths linked to their autopilot feature, and they didn't play nice with NHTSA. So that's some of the nuance behind it. Now, if this isn't all enough, you know it's getting real when the accountants get involved. So the big four accounting firms, Ernst & Young, they're all calling for standardization around ESG reporting standards. This is a good thing. The World Economic Forum, same thing as well. So they want new ESG reporting metrics that are standardized. So let's follow the money for a second. $17 trillion, that's how much sustainable investing assets reached over the last few years. That's a big number. So question for the group, you can just shout out an answer here. What percentage of all professionally managed assets in the United States, so money that is managed by somebody else, maybe like Janice, are projected to have an ESG mandate by 2025? 5%, 10%, 15, 20, 25%, 60. You don't count, you teach this stuff. Okay, the answer is actually half. Half of all professionally managed assets in the United States will have an ESG mandate by 2025. That is a huge number. Well, back to our friends on the right. Right? So, you hear this sometimes. Well, the good news is that there have been dozens and dozens and dozens of studies that debunk this myth. So, Morgan Stanley, a 14-year study of 11,000 mutual funds showed that there is no financial trade-off, and that sustainable funds actually demonstrate lower downside risk. Barron's, same thing. Morningstar, same thing. And I just think it's really interesting that this last point, a focus on company-level ESG factors rather than exclusionary screening can lead to better risk-adjusted performance at the portfolio level. So a lot of this negative downside risk is there. So again, we're going to get into the weeds a little bit, but a strong environmental, social, and governance proposition leads to productivity growth and value creation in these 5 ways. Top-line growth, cost reductions, regulatory and legal interventions, productivity uplift, and investment asset and optimization. I do want to say one thing. We're attracting and retaining talent, and we'll get to this a little bit more in a moment. Attracting and retaining talent is incredibly important, and retaining talent is really important. The cost of turnover, when people leave your business, the cost of turnover is very high. So for executive level employees, it can be 12 to 24 months of their salary. That's how much it can cost when you have executive level turnover. When you have frontline employee turnover, that cost is somewhere between 3 and 6 months. So a strong ESG proposition as a way to attract and retain talent, specifically retain talent, is a cost reduction measure as well. All right, so let's continue to follow the money. There is a thing called the Great Wealth Migration, and the Great Wealth Migration refers to $68 trillion, trillion with a T. This is probably like the 3rd time I've said trillion. This is like a thing now. So $68 trillion of wealth moving from baby boomers and older generations to younger generations. And this $68 trillion, that's going to happen over the next 25 years. It represents the wealth of about 44 million American households. And most studies suggest that 80% or more of the heirs of this money will be looking for a new financial advisor to invest their money. So, do we think that Gen Z and Millennials invest the same way as boomers and the silent generation? No, of course not. Of course they don't. They invest and consume completely differently than previous generations. I'm not representing my generation well. I should have my Batman t-shirt on today. But it really is a staggering statistic. And but I didn't know this, by the way. Does anybody know why the silent generation is called the silent generation? Does anybody know this? I just found this out the other day. This was a generation that was brought up that was told that children should be seen and not heard. So that's why they're called the silent generation. I did not know that. Anyway, so we move on. We follow the money. We follow the money a little bit more. 75% of individual investors are interested in sustainable investing. 86% of millennials. 71% believe that companies with leading sustainability practices may be better long-term investments, and the numbers back them up. The millennials, to talk about them a little bit more, they're the ones who are willing to pay more for sustainable products. They're the ones that are checking labels and kite marks for a pro-social and pro-environmental message. And they're doing this more than any other generation. And they prefer to work for a sustainable company as well. Now, again, business school, right? We talk about willingness to pay and driving willingness to pay and getting to the profit frontier. This is a way to do that. This is good from a values perspective. It's the right thing to do to run your business in a sustainable way, as well as a value perspective. We are making money or cost savings, and you can drive profit through sustainability as well. Millennials, again, 83% agree with this statement. It is extremely or very important to me that companies implement programs that improve the environment. So, the accessibility of information, how we can find out what a corporation does, what they believe, is easier to find now than ever. In 2013, you're looking at only 20% of companies disclosing their ESG status, and then, present day, 80% are disclosing their ESG status. All right, and it's very, very easy to find. You go to your favorite financial website, and you've got all the regular financial metrics that you can look at, but over here, you've got sustainability as well. So you click on that, and you find an ESG score. Double-click on that, and you can find the product involvement areas of the company. So you can see what they're involved with. So if you are thinking about investing or divesting from a company that is engaged in gambling or tobacco or pesticide use, et cetera, you can find that information much, much more easily now than ever before. So, who wins? Who wins in what I call this elevated economy? So we've all heard the 4 Ps of the marketing mix, right? Product, price, place, and promotion. Well, I would argue that there is a 5th P that is more important than all of them, and that is the 5th P of purpose. And purpose is inherently linked to value creation, like we talked about before. And companies who can legitimately articulate a story that includes meaning and purpose beyond simply the product attributes, they will have a greater chance of winning in the new elevated economy. And a key component of that purpose can be encapsulated by our favorite 3-letter acronym of ESG. And as we know, purpose motivates employees to join a firm. It motivates them to stay there, to work harder, be more creative. It drives decision-making for people, specifically investors, to buy or sell. And it increases a consumer's willingness to pay for goods and services. So let's talk about purpose for a second. So President Kennedy toured Cape Canaveral in the 60s, and he ran into somebody. And here's what the person said. I'm here to put a man on the moon. If that isn't an example of a purpose-motivated employee, I don't know what is. So, a workforce motivated by a strong sense of higher purpose is essential to engagement. There have been a bunch of surveys that have been done recently, and a survey by Calling Brands found that working for an organization with a clearly defined purpose is second only to pay and benefits in importance for employees. 66% said that a higher purpose would motivate them to go the extra mile in their jobs. And another study showed that 50%, half of all of today's workforce would take a 15% pay cut to work for an organization with an inspiring purpose. It's incredible. So, a note on what the consequences might be if companies don't change. Unilever recently spent €1 billion attempting to align their products with their customers' values by removing fossil fuels from their detergent brands. So you see consumers shunning brands that don't align with their values. Employee activism is another area that is a consequence when companies don't change. So in response to climate inaction by their firms, Amazon workers formed a group called Amazon Employees for Climate Justice. And they staged a walkout of the Seattle headquarters. And when they walked out of the Seattle headquarters, you had employees from not only Amazon, but Google and Microsoft and Apple and Facebook join them all at the same time. And what happened 2 months later? Amazon pledged $2 billion to the climate crisis. You have Wayfair employees refusing to work because they didn't want their company selling mattresses to the government, who was using the whole kids in cages thing on the border. You've got Google employees refusing to work on projects for the military as well. So, to sum up, there we go. There's a Nielsen study that basically said that a new era of sustainability is rising, and it's really touching every corner of the world. Change is happening fast, responses are dramatic, because the 5th P, purpose, is really driving change, and it is inherently linked to issues of far greater importance than those other 4 Ps that we saw earlier on. Buying for purpose means that people are buying and making economic decisions and investing decisions based on not micro considerations, just thinking about themselves, but macro considerations, considering other stakeholders, the environment, etc. So, here we are. This is one of my favorite quotes. Every time you spend money, you're casting a vote for the kind of world that you want. The beautiful thing is that the people in this room are the change makers. The students, the faculty, the staff, the people from the business community, my kids. The other beautiful thing that I would say is that we've had the power this whole time. We can choose what we buy. We can choose what not to buy. We can choose not to buy. We can choose how we invest. We can choose the causes and the candidates that we support. And we can choose how we build our companies. We can choose to dare to do business differently. We can dare to do business differently. Thank you so much.
Such a pleasure to be here representing the Social Responsibility and Sustainability Division of the Leeds School of Business. Catherine and her team are doing amazing work. And I represent a really incredible group of faculty. And so I'd like to just briefly, I'm not going to keep you along from the food that's out there, but I want to just briefly share about some of the things that our faculty are doing to impact 5 different community stakeholder groups, and to bring this message of a more sustainable business world that Richard so inspiringly outlined for us, and really find actionable ways of living that out. So those 5 stakeholder communities I'm going to talk about are the scholarly community. After all, we are academics, so we're doing original research to inform and offer insights about more sustainable business. It's our undergraduate students, and we've got some of those here tonight. It is our local Front Range business community and well beyond the local Front Range. It is our alumni community. And then it is also those leaders who are coming back to us for additional training and skills building. In all of these 5 communities, the SRS faculty, in collaboration with CESR, are really driving tangible impact for this more sustainable business world. So I'll just briefly address those 5 community groups. With respect to the scholarly community, we have faculty who are doing world-class research. Our chair, Jeff York, is a world expert on entrepreneurship for the green economy. He is looking at ways that market-based solutions are driving the change we need to address that E piece of the ESG. My colleague Marcia Kwarumba is in Africa right now doing field research, studying the power of entrepreneurship to lift small business owners out of poverty. Amazing stuff. My colleague Zach Donahue is working with some of the largest space companies in the world to figure out this really thorny problem of how you efficiently and equitably set rules for governing near-Earth orbital space. We've got all this stuff floating around up there, and it's getting, in many cases, close to or actually colliding, creating a mess. And so we are coming up with innovative solutions based in research that the world's largest space companies here in the US and internationally are using to set those rules in a bottom-up, industry-organized way. And then finally, we have other great research going on as well, but I'll just briefly mention the work that I do, which is looking at contemplative practice as a catalyst for forming more sustainable business leaders. So I look at practices ranging from yoga, mindfulness, prayer, philosophical dialectic, even the legal therapeutic use of psychedelics as potential practices that can help us form more sustainable, conscientious market leaders. It's really, really exciting contributions, and I'm really proud to represent our faculty and the work that we are doing in this space. Secondly, I'm going to address the next 2 groups, our undergraduate students and the Front Range and Beyond business community together. I'd like to just briefly share about this capstone course that we run called The Sustainable Firm, ESG Strategies and Practice. Within that course, we have this incredible pro bono ESG consulting service learning project where we are placing teams of undergraduate students for 3-month-long real-life sustainability consulting engagement at companies from here locally to companies of a national reach. So we had a student team this last spring who worked with Xcel Energy to improve their TCFD reporting, one of the major frameworks used for carbon footprint. We had another student team this spring who worked with a publicly traded biotech company to deliver their first sustainability report. They were absolutely instrumental in helping the sustainability lead to roll this out. So our students are doing high impact, powerful work even while they are still here at Leeds. They are taking insights directly from the classroom into places of business and making a change in the strategy, the tactics, and the reporting of these companies. And it's exciting for me to then see those students graduate and get placed and have full-time roles in continuing that work. So that's one of the ways in which we're contributing both to our undergrads' sustainability education as well as supporting the sustainability of the business community locally and beyond. Our alumni community, Catherine and I have been working recently to form these working focus groups among our alumni leaders. These are dedicated students who want to make more principled, ethically mindful decisions in their workplace, but often it's hard, it's ambiguous, and they don't really know what the right thing to do is. And so we have created these safe working spaces where our young 1 to 5 years out Leeds alumni are working together with faculty facilitation, working together to figure out these thorny ethical challenges that they are facing as young professionals on the job. Incredibly inspiring for me as a faculty member to see the leadership, the vision, the conviction that they're bringing, and also the esprit de corps, to see them working together is just incredible. And then we're taking the intelligence that we're getting from these groups, and we are then embedding insights from what we're learning from our alumni back into our curriculum, so that we're being sure that we're offering an education that isn't just relevant to what the decisions that CEOs are making or what our alumni may face 20 years out of Leeds. We want them to be prepared for the tough ethical and sustainability choices that they're going to be making 1 year out, 3 years out, 5 years out. So we're retooling aspects of our education here at Leeds in order to make sure that that happens. Really exciting stuff. And then our last group are those professionals who come back to us, whether through our traditional, our part-time MBA program, our EMBA program, and they want these insights, these actionable skills and tools to lead their businesses more sustainably. And so we are delivering, as a faculty, those actionable insights to people who are already leaders and looking for the kind of offering, really, that Richard gave us a little teaser of tonight, so that they can be instrumental, not just in years, but tomorrow, in shaping that more sustainable business world. So that's just a little thumbnail sketch of what we are doing as a faculty at Leeds to push for this kind of change. Really excited to be a part of it, and really delighted to partner with CESR to have this institutional fixture within our business school to help us drive these initiatives forward. So thank you all for being here tonight, and thank you, Catherine.